they had grabbed the other police officer and took him inside the house. Okay, so you had a long stand up, where the community would not allow no so-called leader or nobody to come close to the house, and every attempt by his family and stuff to try to negotiate was rebuffed by the police. So at 4 o'clock the next morning, that's when they make their raid. When they go in and try to take over, take control. They had basically learned that one police officer had died because somebody hit him upside the head with a big flashlight. And so uh, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they poured in tear gas. That tear gas that's illegal by the UN say you're not supposed to use even in war. They basically knocked all these people out in the house, and then they fired into the house. They came in, and those men were knocked. 7 men were laying on the floor, and they shot each one of those men in the head. Now, how do we know this? A couple of months later, in March, I was working with the Black United Front here in Memphis, National Black United Front, and we went to investigate. And even 2 months later, the tear gas tube, was still in there, in the house. We went and we looked to see were bullets fired, from the inside to the outside. There were no bullets fired from the inside to the outside. And we went and we saw the holes in the floor where the young man had been laid, and we saw bullet holes that was fired from the outside in. But the single mark was looking at the bullet hole where these people were laying, and see that they were executed by the Memphis Police Department. Now, 6 months later, they came, commercial appeal, which is some people call it commercial appalling,
Yes.
came out with a story totally different from what the disinformation that had been put out by the police. This was called, and when we look at that, situation, then they came up with a story that was entirely different, and this was like a mistake, made by the police, and so we had talked to some people who had gotten away. Some of them were like, one guy was, they took him to the bridge and hung him over the bridge, like they were going to drop him. You know, they did all kinds of things to try to, discredit, what the people in the house and stuff like that. So, um, uh, this has never been addressed, even today. Uh, and it reminds me of the movie, uh, you know, the killing of the people, 11 people in, Philadelphia. Matter of fact, after the Philadelphia thing happened, I made a move to Oakland, California, to work with a group organization because they raised up the whole question of police terror in our community, and the consorting of the mayors and administrators and allowing police to terrorize our community. Um, I want to say that also in 2009 we had an instance where it's not just the Memphis police. Barton, a little town that's north of Memphis, they got about 5% African American. Barton police came in to an area in North Memphis on so-called some kind of warrant. Went in and killed Malcolm Shaw, and saying that he was selling drugs or whatever. Somehow I don't know if he did something in Bartlett, and the Bartlett police went in and killed this man in his house, and there was no evidence of any drugs or anything in the house. You know, there's no evidence that he had there was a weapon in the house, but there's no evidence that he tried to use a weapon or tried to point the weapon. But it's like the no knock, no warrants that happen. When they go in, they can do anything, say anything, to get people to think that there was a threat, inside, and they'll go in and execute. And we found that the police, one of the captains, police captains, was a person who himself was involved in drugs. sparked it. But I'm just saying, even adjacent police forces from different areas can come in and and just take away the rights of citizens in their own house. Uh, I'm going to end this by saying that if we look at the history of police terror, and we can go back even to after the Civil War in Memphis in 1860, where there was a riot, so-called riot. The riot was an attack on the black community. And since that time, it's always been a kind of a tradition that the police force can come and do anything it pleases in our community. And I want to say that, and the community, as the sister was saying, is not, the community that we have today is not knowledgeable of any history, of any struggle, of any movement, and we have become, and we don't even have organizations like civic clubs and stuff like we used to have in, back in the 60s and 70s. And so therefore we have people who are individuals, and they do not see that connection, even if they're anybody in their family, with other families or with the community. The community is completely broken down, and this is what the task is. The task must be, how do we connect people, get people organized in organizations that protect their own interests? And once we're able to do that, we'll see that the spark will create the fire that will be necessary to stop all these injustices. And basically, we need to be talking about community control of every institution, particularly the police. The police are out of control, and the community does not have any say-so whatsoever as to how they behave in our community.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with this statement by saying that I think what we really need to talk about, in addition to organizing in our communities, is the fact that we're organizing against the institution of police. We're organizing against the state. We're organizing against a system of capitalism that uses the police as a tool to beat down and murder poor people. That's an ordinary course of business. And we can talk about civil rights, and we should, because these were rights we had to fight for. We can talk about any manner of democratic and human rights, and we should. But it's important that we understand going in that we're building a movement, and that's an anti-racist movement. And by that, I'm not saying, oh, well, we're just trying to get along with white folks. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who are opposed to the same system of oppression coming together in common cause to defeat it. That's what we're talking about. And so it's really, really important that we all understand. Now, we all got the same cloth here. You know, we're painting a narrative, what we call painting a picture. And it's really important to understand that we all see atrocities in every city we're in. I mean, I don't really think that there's anything here in this city that's happening in terms of people being killed that's any worse than what I saw in Chattanooga when we worked there, or that we saw in Detroit when the police were murdering people there. We live, in Michigan. And you can point to cities all over the country, and that's why we're meeting here today, because you can point to cities all over the country, and this same thing is happening. It's even happening in cities that have hardly no black population at all. So then they got to kill Mexicans and they got to kill Indians. You know what I'm saying? So we're talking about a kind of system here that is using police state terrorism because they got an economic and social crisis. I mean, they kill people here, police have killed people for years. But there's been an escalation recently, an escalation here in the number of people being killed. And the reason for this is because of the deep-seated economic and social crisis. Just as like, let me tie this to this. The question of repression generally, and the fact that you got a massive prison complex in this country, which is larger than any other in the world. All of that's related. And the fact that you got widespread racial profiling to control the population's movements, it means that they're creating a form of state, a corporate fascist state. And so the Black Panther Party was clear and understood that 30-some years ago. Or was it 40-something? 40-some years ago. I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. But they understood that we're fighting fascism. And we ain't fighting just the Ku Klux Klan, which is a marginal movement as opposed to the state itself and state control. Because the state hires these people, the government hires these people. You see what I'm saying? So essentially, you always wonder, well, why we haven't run into so many problems, just organized against the government, or organized, I should say, against the police. Well, because you are organizing against the government, in essence, there's no question about it. So, in every city we're in, we're going to have the same narrative. The same narrative about somebody who's murdered. First, to give you an example, this Chavis Carter case that got national attention out of Jonesboro, Arkansas, sometime last year, mid-spring or summer last year. And the reality is, the way he was killed, his arm, hands behind his back, is identical to a young black man in Chattanooga, Tennessee, who was killed the same way. He was in a police car. His hands were cuffed behind his back, and they claimed that somehow he had a pistol and shot himself in the stomach. And then they said that, now, he shot himself in the stomach, and then supposedly they heard the shot, and they came over, and he said to the cop, I shot myself. Well, if you believe that, I got a bridge to say this over the Mississippi River down here, I'll say you that bridge. So this stuff happened over and over again, and it doesn't matter about the story they tell you that people got killed. It doesn't have to be plausible as far as they're concerned. All you got to know is that we have power, we can make this happen, and you have to challenge us. That's it. It don't mean a damn thing else. It ain't got nothing to do with no other narrative. It's we got power. If you want to challenge us, you got to get organized, and you got to make things happen. You got to make justice happen. And we'll win some victories along the way. Let me tell you one thing that's happening now. The federal government, people, most of them liberals, black and white, first thing they do is holler for the federal government to investigate. Well, what the federal government does, since the 60s, they had a program that they called Ghetto Informant Program. Most of in the 1960s, most of the black rebellions were because of police brutality. And so since that time, they organized that Ghetto Informant Program to get preachers and to get other elements like that, to get politicians and other elements to inform on activists, militants. They said, well, who are starting things, who are egging things on, and all this kind of thing. And the Ghetto Informant Program is now called the Community Relations Service of the Department of Justice. And the Community Relations Service, what they do is they claim to come in and investigate a death. And what they're really coming in to do is investigate people who are activists and who they feel could stir up trouble and could cause and to find out whether or not the people are angry enough to have a rebellion. So this is what's happening in New York now. With the rebellion that broke out there, which was semi-spontaneous. I don't know all of the facts, but it looks to be semi-spontaneous because there's organizing and there's, you got street fighting. That caught them off guard. That scared the shit out of them. That's the scenario that scares them. They are afraid of that scenario of rebellions all over the country. They're also afraid of a mass movement come together around police brutality that can go and literally get in the face of the government. They're also afraid of that. And but I think starting out, we got to have an understanding that we are fighting the police system. Ain't no good cops. Ain't no such thing. Put them all in the same graveyard. They are enemies of the people. Pure and simple. Somebody's been writing us letters talking about we should work with some group of black cops. We should work with some group of black cops. I mean, there's people who believe that, honestly, and truly believe that somehow this is going to change something.
Yeah.
We ain't working with no damn black cops or white ones either. We have long ago understood that these people are agents of the state. There ain't no such thing as no, we're fighting police brutality too. Or if you want to do some Dorner stuff, get your gun and do it. We ain't stopping you from doing it. That's all we tell those cops. You want to do some Dorner shit. Get your rifle, get your shotgun, whatever, and start capping the cops. And you want to stop police brutality, that's what that needs to be done. So our thing is that we need to organize with a real understanding that we are not trying to preserve this system. We're not trying to preserve the so-called right of the police to rule over us in any sort of way. I mean, that's real important to understand, because you're going to have people along the way say, oh, well, we're fighting to make reforms in the police department. And yeah, we were like, we know it exists, so we got to have certain so-called reforms, like stop killing us. But the reality is, ultimately, we are out to destroy this system that is oppressing the people. And that's just pure and simple. And it's really important to understand it, because then you will have, and you'll be locked into some consciousness to know that they can't pacify you with some bullshit about some federal investigation. You know what I'm saying? They can't pacify you with that. You know, we don't want a damn federal investigation. We want these killer cops removed, period. And if they don't remove them, we'll remove them. That's as simple as that. It's reached that stage. And we gotta look at, observe what's happening in New York, and we gotta understand that we gotta have a fighting spirit in this movement. If we're gonna build a movement against racism and police brutality, we gotta have a certain fighting spirit in it. But they'll commit these crimes. They've proven that. All the stuff they do, and all the terrorism, and all the cover-up, and all that stuff, they will commit those crimes. What we got to do is force accountability on them. But we want to overthrow them and transform the situation entirely. So, as I'm saying, it comes down to why you're here today, and we'll give you a chance to talk in the next segment. Why you're here today is because we all want to come together to the neighborhoods, cities, whatever we come from, to begin the process of building a broad-based campaign, broad-based movement. I said, well, it's only 10, 12 people. Hey, it's been mass movements built that come together to change entire countries built around 10, 15 people. Hell, there's only, 2, 3 people started the Black Panther Party.
Two people started the Black
Two
Panther.
people.
Two people.
And so you don't have to have uh, thousands of millions to start a movement. You just need to have the correct political position about why you're doing it. We ain't all got to agree on everything, but we got to agree around a general agenda. A general agenda. And we ain't all got to use the same tactics. In the community you're going to. Some communities you have to use certain things. Like Memphis is different from all of the cities we've organized. We've organized in the last 12, 15 years. Chattanooga, Tennessee. We organized in Nashville. We organized in Southwest Michigan and in Detroit. We organized in Chicago. We organized in a hell of a lot of places just in the last few years. And that doesn't even include going back to the days of the Black Panther Party, you know what I'm saying? So we got a history of organizing. And the party had laid down some real understanding to people about fighting police brutality, police terrorism. And that has generally been lost in most of the movements that have come on the scene since, because they are dominated by a kind of class politics that ties them to the state and to reforms. You know what I'm saying? As I said, you're going to have to win reforms, but you ain't got to fight necessarily specifically for reform. You want to win. We don't fight for reform, we fight for it. We call them concessions. It's like when they're beating your ass, they want to get a concession out of you. Confess! Confess! Go in there and confess and tell the judge you did something, So that's what we want to do. We want to build a movement that's strong enough to essentially beat their asses in the street and force, we'll force concessions out of them along the way. But we're going to the place of overthrowing this shit. That's what we got to realize. We're going to the point of overthrowing this, period. And we shouldn't shrink from that. Otherwise, this is class warfare. What it is. Like, this is race warfare, not all of that. But I'm saying it's fundamentally the people on the bottom that are fighting the army of the 1%. And these are the people committing murder. That's what we're doing. So when I hear, you know, the NACP and all these other people talk, they here, that's interesting to hear the NACP doesn't even make the pretense of being concerned. We call them, what's it, Negroes ain't actually caring about people. That's what we call them. And the Southern Christian Leadership, or whatever the hell it is supposed to be, not the King's old group, call it the Southern Christian Liars Club. That's what we call it. Because they're in bed, straight in bed with the power structure, and they don't even express any reservations at all with the police do. Because they say, well, the police, we got to be behind the police because we got to fight crime. This is their line. This is a class line. And we have to ideologically defeat that in our community. That's part of what we got to defeat. And there's other things too, don't get me wrong. But we have got to defeat that. You know, it's all about crime. Yeah, the criminals are the so-called law enforcers. And the criminal is behind the law enforcers is the state and these rich people and these corporations. And that's why I was saying that, you know, part of what we have to do is to have a boycott of Memphis. Not because I'm talking about something that happened 40, 50 years ago. What I'm saying is it's a way of smoking out the people who really run this system. We call them into account. We force them to be part of the equation of why the police terrorism is taking place in the city. You know, I was digging and I read this article. You know, it's Vasco Smith. Vasco Smith was some sort of, what, was he an activist here or something or other? But anyway, in speaking about police brutality at a meeting, and the mayor, and the so-called mayor now, who then was he county or city? Yeah.
But I think he was with legal services.
Okay, okay. But at any rate, Vasco Smith said, and talking about police brutality and all these people being killed at that time in the 80s, he said the white people, the rich white people who run this system are the ones responsible for this. He said if you're going to really strike a blow at this system about these police killings, you're going to have to find a way to get their attention, cripple them with a boycott or something like this. He laid that out then. Now, this, like I said, this guy, it kind of startled me because I had no real knowledge of this guy, but I knew he wasn't no revolutionary. He wasn't wearing no beret when he said it, the black beret or nothing. But he said we've got to find a way to cripple the rich people, the rich white people, behind the scenes that are letting this kind of police terrorism go on because they control it. They control it. See what I'm saying? So we got to understand this. You know, we got all this bullshit written in books and people give lectures and all that, but some of the shit isn't practical because people don't understand how to apply it. Theory is fine, but if you can't apply it in a real situation, it doesn't mean shit. It doesn't mean a damn thing. It's just rote learning. Just something in the book. You might as well go this Sylvan method or some bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean anything. You have to apply ideological understanding. So our thing has to be that we understand that we have to, when we're fighting the cops, we're fighting the government. The mayor ain't gonna do shit to correct problems with the police chief and all this stuff until we want to force splits in their ranks. They want to force splits in ours. They want to do it based on color. They want to do it based on political beliefs. They want to do it based on you over in one neighborhood, I'm over in another, this and that and other. They want to create all these splits that brother talked about. All these splits. They do it in the black community, so they do it everywhere. They create splits so that you can't come together. They don't want you to come together. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm not asking white people to join black autonomy. That's what I'm talking about. But we're creating a mass movement against police terrorism. That's what we call it, the Ida B. Wells Coalition Against Racism and Police Brutality. Because Ida B. Wells, she was a staunch revolutionary, in my opinion, anyway. People say, oh, she was a, this, that, and other, but she carried a gun. She was a feminist. She was way ahead of her time. She was opposed to lynching. She understood lynchings were part of white supremacy. She was opposed to all this stuff that this Nathan Bedford Forrest is laying over his damn grave in a park somewhere, which, that's a whole different subject. I get into that in the next, later on this evening, afternoon, whatever. But she understood this, that lynching was a form of repression of poor people as well as of black people and other peoples. You know what I'm saying? She understood that. And that the governments in the South and other states actually, because the Ku Klux Klan was very powerful in other states, they allowed this to happen. It was approved policies. It was approved, but just like today, it's approved policy. They don't have the Ku Klux Klan doing it for them. They got the police. It's carrying out the same basic policies. So from that standpoint, we need to understand what we're building, um, how small we start, what we're building, and how we reach people, and how we bring more people in, and we're doing it slowly but surely. We haven't been here a year yet. Just think about that. We haven't been here a year, and yet we've been able to do. I don't think many people, many groups, would be able to do what we're doing this month. We're doing this conference. We did the demonstration yesterday. Now we got to do the Ku Klux Klan in 2 weeks, a demo there, and then we got to fight the city government even to do that. So you think about how many of you all really could be doing it, and I'm sure you all got collectives and stuff. And we don't have it. This is what we got, basically, and some other people working with us as well, but not a hell of a lot. And we're new, so we're accomplishing a great deal, I think, based on the circumstances of what we've got. But I think we want you to go away with this understanding. One is that we have to build strong local groups. You may belong to a strong local group already, stronger than what we got. Well, why the hell should we listen to these guys? Well, one is you're here. Yeah. But the other thing is, we realize the pivotal importance of Memphis in terms of police terrorism. It's the #1 city right now in terms of police killings. And man, I'm talking about they kill them left and right. We went out of town for a vacation, come back, 2 people dead in January. So the acceleration of the process here, the killings and so forth, and the stories they're telling, and then all this stuff with the cops beating each other in the street. I mean, it's like a cop. If you had a nightmare and you were sleeping, and cops were in your nightmare were just running around doing all kinds. They were beating each other in the head. They were shooting people in the street. They were jumping on people and beating them down in the streets, and all this stuff was happening every day. And the cops would go around making fun of you, but we can do this right when we want to. We can kick your ass and get away with it. And it was so funny when I went to this thing yesterday. Went in this coffee shop, and the cops were in there. A bunch of cops were in there because this is apparently their hangout right across from City Hall. And I went in there to get some coffee, or whatever the hell it was. And they were in there talking. They saw a bunch of white people coming up, and they were like, well, what are these white people doing over there? What, you see that? There's a bunch of white people. What these white people doing over there? Well, hell, we do everything for them. All the stuff we're doing is for white people. What they upset about? And get out there and march with those other people. So and I looked at this and I said, damn. I didn't say anything. I just let them rant. They were talking about shooting somebody in the back. They shot some kid in the back. Apparently, now I don't know if this is true, but the cop claimed that one of the cops, or the cop that shot the kid, the 12-year-old kid down in West Memphis, is employed by the police department in Memphis or by another agency in Memphis. Do you know about this? Well, they talked about it, but mainly they were talking about how white people were coming here to stir up trouble. Why white people? Everything we do is for white people. What are they upset about? They didn't know what's going on. So I don't know. I guess you have to look at this the way